All right, welcome to the last fab video before final assembly of everything. So I've got all the hard pieces in place of where they need to go, and I don't have that much left. So I'm gonna go over all the little details on everything. I should be able to wrap up stuff here quickly because everything's found its home. I figured out how everything's gonna work together. I've had to change a few things, I've added a few things, and there's not much more I have to add to everything. So I'm gonna go over the details of all that. Now, starting off, this is the axle at full bump. You can see I have the actual shocks in here for today, but this is, and I'll go over this on full flex, but this is full bump on both sides. Got your drag link, you got your tie rod. I did add these bump stop pads, which these are 3/8 plates on the verticals, and then they're 2 stacked 1/4" plates on the top. So that's where my bump stops are gonna be going at. I needed something super heavy duty and offset to kind of space it away from the shock. So that's just a little simple design I came up with there. And then I also added limit strap mounts over on this arm. So kind of some big things to keep in mind when you're building your stuff. There's a lot of trucks that have the bump stops kind of outboard of the frame a lot. And you want to try to keep them as inboard of the frame as possible because those things are taking an impact. And if you have it sticking out a lot, it's going to create a lot of leverage on the frame, rip stuff off, bend it. And the professional trucks that do stuff like that, they have it completely tied into the cage. So there's a lot of reinforcement when it's outbound. So ideally you want it as close to it as possible. And that's kind of where I've gone here. So that's why the bump stops are here. And this is so close to that frame in itself. So just something to keep in mind when you're mounting your hydro bumps. And then the limit straps, I'll go over that a little bit more once I drop this thing out. But you can see kind of the final fitment of everything, how all that clears the cross member, all the space in there with the ram, how the drag link clears on that truss. So everything's looking perfect. Coming to this side, I've got the bump stop mounted out right there. So that's where it's gonna go. I'll have 2 1/4" plates holding that to the actual frame that get welded all the way around, but that is full compression as you can see. And when this is at full compression, these shocks have 3/4" of stroke left. And the reason why you want to do that is on those big hits, shock's not going to bottom out, but then when you're flexing under those softer hits, it will still fully use all that suspension travel, and quality shocks can take the bottoming out. So that's how all that stuff looks like. I do have a drive shaft in here. You can see how that looks, and then compared to the arms. So like you already know, I have those arms bent in for tire clearance, and then that drive shaft is right there. But yeah, that's all of that stuff. Going over to the tower, so I have the towers in place, and then I have the shock mounts up here. So everything is up to the roof, just like in that last video stated. I've added this tower cross member now. And the thinking behind that is, one, I had to clear the intake horn on this diesel, and I also wanted it high enough to where if I have to service anything, if I have to take the valve covers off, if I have to do valve lash, it's completely out of the way. And I feel like it's going to be completely out of the way in absolutely everything. But if I need to take it off, I do have these tube connectors here. I can just unbolt it and then pop that cross member off. As far as layout, you have a tight 1/4" behind it against the cab. And then I know this looks high, but when the hood's closed, I can actually stick my whole hand around there, which means that there's at least 3/4" of clearance between that bar and the actual hood when it's completely closed. So completely up out of the way. I still got to add the back shock bracket, which will be right where this washer is, and then I'll probably tie it in there and do something on the backside here to kind of tie it in there just to give it more rigidity. But that's how that turned out. Really happy with that and how that's going to go. It's going to clear everything. The other thing is with these shocks back in this hoop, the way that they are, and then inbound, it would have been extremely tight if not touching the actual brake reservoir for all the brake fluid. So my master cylinder prior was a 1.313 bore, which going to the calculator, and let me actually show you that. Since I was doing a new master cylinder anyways, this is actually a brake calculator where you put in your rotor diameters, rotor weights, weight of vehicle, kinetic energy, speed that you want to stop at. You put in all these things, tire radius, all of this stuff in here. And this is actually how you calculate the proper master cylinder bore. So doing all this and at least going to the Super Duty calipers I have in the front now, that 1.313 was a little bit too much where it wasn't creating enough pressure, because the bigger the bore, it's going to fill in more piston area, but you're going to have to apply a lot more pressure. So I went down to a 1.25 inch bore, 1.25, and this unit is super sick because it's an OEM unit and it has a remote resi, as you can kind of tell for those are lines to go to the remote reservoir. So it's going to completely clear everything. I don't have to worry about that. I can mount it elsewhere. So I'm super psyched about that unit. I'll have that plumbed a little bit later, but you can see that'll be the front brake line. That'll be the rear to the proportioning valve. That'll go into the rear brakes. So everything's tucked up in there. Super nice on everything. Super psyched. And yeah, let me flex this thing out, put a tire on here, and kind of show you how everything's looking. And here's the money shot. So this is the axle at complete flex, stuffed on the passenger, fully drooped on the driver. Going over all the clearances, you can see how high that tire sits in here. The cut I have, it's about a fist from the top of the tire to the actual cut of the fender, which once I go to 42s, because this is only a 40, it'll be a little bit less than that, but that is nice enough clearance. You can see how I am with the straight tire, and I'll turn this soon enough. Very close to that headlight as of right now. When I go to 42s, I'm definitely going to have to trim some stuff up here, give it a little bit more room, and I'll go over that a little bit down the line. But you can see how that looks in there. Coming over to the full droop side, this is the shock fully drooped out. The drive shaft is nearly fully drooped, just because when that side goes down, it'll go down a little bit lower, but all this still spins in here. I got those high clearance joints, so not worried about that. What's cool as well is this tubing for the drive shaft. It's actually 2.5 quarter wall, and to kind of give you a perspective, this is 2-inch quarter wall, so this drive shaft is actually even stronger. And if I have these for long arms, I'm not worried about that drive shaft. Ideally, I'm not trying to hit it, but if I do, I shouldn't have to worry about breaking it. But this is how everything looks down here with these limit straps. So this is where it's going to be mounted on the axle. On the frame side, I'll have it mounted up on the tower. This is just a template for now, but this will be made out of inch, I'm guessing. And it'll be nice in a straight line, lined up with where that is on the axle. And because of how long this limit strap has to be, and it has to be mounted up here, not down here, because at full compression, this part of the axle is up here, and you don't want these things to collide and run into each other. So it'll be about up there. And because of how long this is going to be, you're going to have obviously a lot of strap drooping. So I'll probably put some kind of tab on the frame side. I'll have a bungee cord pulling that towards the frame, because under full compression, that's obviously going to get in the way of that tire turning. You don't want it to hit. So I'll have that just pulling against there. And then when this is straight, it's not going to run into that tire at all. So it should be totally fine. Not too worried about that. One big modification I had to make is on this track bar bracket. So originally I had it designed to key in right here, and this isn't something that I was able to figure out until I actually got the shocks all mounted up and everything. But under full droop, the shock moves back, and then if that side's up and this side's down, the shock's also going to move towards the frame that way. You can kind of tell by the angle, because these are actually angled, and right now it looks pretty much straight up and down. But the thing that I didn't catch is when you look directly down here, see if I can get a good angle, is that this black part of where that spring rides in that bottom retainer, that was actually running into the bracket. And I didn't even calculate that until I flexed it out. So being now that I have that moved back approximately an inch, I have more room. As you can see, when that lower spring's on there, it's not gonna run into that track bar mount. It's maybe about a finger, which is plenty room for me to actually run. Ideally, it wasn't part of the plan, just because of now, since it's moved back more, it's even closer to that oil pan, which, oh shoot. Which right now I can stick barely a finger in here. I mean, I can on some parts, but that's just something I wanted to get farther away from the oil pan. I wasn't expecting to go back that rearward, but this is what's gonna work. And then I've already got to take this engine out again anyways. So you can see how close this is. I had to cut into the motor mount there. I'm gonna plate that, probably cut into the frame a little bit and put some kind of reinforcement in there, just so this has more clearance in that frame. But that's what I'm working with, and that took me a lot of time the other day of trying to grind all that out without pulling this whole axle out again, because that just takes me so much time all by myself. But that's where everything's at. These towers are just tacked in here for now. And the reason is once I get those shocks bolted up, or both plates mounted up, I want to be able to take this off, weld all up under there, put it up on the bench so I'm not welding upside down since it's just MIG. And that's why I have it that way. And then once I get all that welded and finalized, I'll put these back on the frame exactly where I have it. I have these all jigged out, spaced out, so I can just slap it back on, weld in a few passes all around on the frame there. So that was something that held me up a lot, but everything does clear as of right now. Everything's looking super good. Now, looking at something else I want to bring attention to is the last thing I need to make really is the sway bar, and the sway bar is going to mount through this tube here. I'm going to turn this tire so you can see what kind of a clearance I'm dealing with, but let me get to that. I'll actually turn it passenger first so we can see the firewall clearance. So I'm not able to turn it all the way because I have that C-clamp holding that tower bracket on still, but this does give you a good idea because this is going to move closer to the cab, but I probably have a couple inches there with this 40 all the way turned. When I have to clearance it more for 42s, it'll actually be pretty easy enough to knock down these pinch wells in this area and just put flat plate. That'll gain me another inch and it'll be the perfect amount for 42s. So later down the line, I'll do that. Not super worried about it right now, but that kind of gives you about how far forward this axle is to space that away from the cab. And then let's go the other direction. All right, and this is turned all the way driver with the passenger side flexed up. So you can see my intercooler. I'm gonna be able to just barely get by, but I will get by on clearance there. When I go to 42s, it'll be even closer, but still should clear where I don't have to modify anything, which relieves me a ton. On the lights, I'm very tight, and I'll turn not all the way locked, but I definitely can cut this a lot more, so I can cut that out. Something I'll have to do about that corner, we'll see, because I do touch that if I'm spinning. Going around shock clearance, completely clear there, of course, because that is in the center line of the tire, so not worried about that. Don't run into the tower. That sway bar coming out, it's got to go through here, clear the tower and the tire, and then get over to the end of the axle over here somewhere. Arm's got to be at least 16 inches. Links are going to be 16 inches. So I got to mount it off there, which mounting it on the axle, I have room right on the outside of that ram mount. Yeah, so that's going to take some work and some thinking, but it's possible. I definitely have confidence in myself that I can make that happen. But that's the last thing that I actually have to fabricate. But this is everything. Full stuff, full lock. You can see how close it gets to that body mount. Looks good. Like, everything is working out better than I would have hoped for. If I was able to do something to where I jacked this up like crazy and I had miles of clearance, doing everything of what I've got going on here would have been the easiest thing in the world. I've got tight clearances everywhere because I wanted to keep a low center of gravity. I wanted as much up travel as possible, and I've achieved it, and I have clearances, but they're tight. And that just shows like how much time and how much effort, because I've trialed and errored so many things at this point, trying to make things work exactly how I wanted it to work, and I think I've done it. I just have to finish it now. But everything's in its home, everything has a place. So yeah, really excited, but I just wanted to go over just all those details, and that last thing is that sway bar, which I'll make happen. But thanks for watching this video. Subscribe, leave a comment, do everything, share this video with someone. I work all by myself all the time, so if you guys have got some stuff on your mind to throw out there that maybe I'm missing, throw it out there, because I don't have anyone to kind of give me all that feedback. Thanks for watching.